Welcome to Module 2, Aging Adult Learner. The purpose of the module is for adult educators and others who create educational activities for older adults to understand the main characteristics of adult learners and processes generally associated with aging. Upon completion, trainers will be able to identify different features of aging, recognize age stereotypes and the ageism concept, specify strategies to prevent combat ageism. In this module we'll talk about features of age, ageism concept and scope, stereotypes, prejudices, and discriminations against the older adult, socialization of the older adult people and ageism, and how to prevent ageism. In the first part of this module, we'll talk about the different features of age. Over the past few years, average life expectancy has been increasing. Aging corresponds to anatomical and physiological changes that generally and inevitably arise over the years, universally affecting all individuals. Aging remains a highly complex domain in terms of understanding the relationships between these contributing factors and the transitions that link them. While the aging process is defined by an increased vulnerability to a decline in health and well-being, new approaches to well-being, along with complex biological, medical, psychosocial, political, and economic factors, may influence individual and group trajectories in adulthood. With aging can come functional losses that may interfere with the individual's ability to maintain autonomy in daily life. Autonomy refers to the perceived ability to control, cope with situations and make decisions about everyday life according to one's preferences. Dependency is related to the person's inability to satisfy basic human needs. The loss of older people's capacity to function due to physical or mental disorders may result in the need for intervention and adaptations to maintain routine activities and lifestyles. Cognitive functions, such as memory, attention, and executive functions, tend to decline with age. However, other elements of cognitive function, such as vocabulary, remain stable across the cognitive lifespan. Longitudinal studies show that fluid intelligence seems to decline progressively with age. However, crystallized intelligence appears to increase steadily across adulthood. Aging does not necessarily imply decline. In fact, this is one of the biggest myths about aging. There are areas where decline occurs, especially if people do not use specific functions. For example, there is an expected loss of muscle strength or bone if people do not exercise. There are foreseen age-related changes in our sensory systems, such as vision and hearing. On the other hand, there are areas where there are gains in that people become, for example, happier, social relationships tend to increase, and personality tends to stabilize with time. In this regard, it becomes pertinent to analyze the areas where there are challenges that can be addressed to some extent and where people have vast opportunities to improve. Chronological age is not necessarily the best indicator of the aging process of each individual. It is clear that the consequences of aging may have more or less favorable outlines, which partly depends on the stage of the aging cycle in which the person is. Thus, several variations can be found in the course of aging, with individual differences being the rule rather than the exception. The discrepancies in aging range from when it begins to the speed at which it occurs, but are particularly denoted in the physical and mental changes that may occur. Thus, to understand an individual's physical and psychological condition, we need to look closely at the individual and not assume only the individual's chronological age. It should also be noted that the life course also varies depending on the time we live in and between cultures. The second part of this module is dedicated to the concept of ageism. Ageism is a complex, multi-layered phenomenon that refers to stereotypes, prejudices, and discrimination directed at others or oneself based on age. To how we think, stereotypes, feel, prejudice, and act, discrimination, towards others or ourselves based on age. Ageism is a complex, multi-layered phenomenon that refers to stereotypes, prejudices, and discrimination directed at others or oneself based on perceived age. Age-based discrimination is prevalent, deeply rooted, and more socially accepted than other forms of prejudice. Older people tend to be marginalized, institutionalized, and abandoned by society, but before, they were often held in high regard, as knowledgeable and regarded as wise custodians of the traditions and history of their people. Older people are now treated as citizens with no active role in society, and the negative attitudes about aging that give rise to ageism tend to manifest themselves in subtle ways. Depending on the level of awareness of the person performing the discrimination or on the level of the person targeted by the discrimination and their awareness and identification with being an older person, ageism can be explicit, through thoughts, feelings, and actions towards others or with themselves, is aware of the discrimination and is intentional, i.e., they are fully aware and in control of their actions. Implicit, through thoughts, feelings, and actions towards others or themselves, but without awareness, without pejorious feelings, and outside of their control. Ageist stereotypes and ingrained convictions trigger their anti-ageist compositions. There are 3 levels of age discrimination. Micro-level, which relates to the individual, e.h., thoughts, emotions, actions. Meso-level, which relates to groups, organizations, and other social entities, e.g., in the field of work or health services. Macro-level, which relates to cultural services or social values as a whole, e.g., political regulations. In summary, ageism is a comprehensive way of negative or positive stereotypes, prejudice and/or discrimination against, or to the advantage of, other people based on their chronological age or perceived age. Often internalized by older adults themselves, ageism is mainly an invisible phenomenon. Let's now look at the particularities of the concept of ageism. The 3 dimensions of ageism in aging are represented by stereotypes, are characterized by cognitive structures that store our beliefs and expectations about the characteristics of members of social groups, and stereotyping is the process of applying stereotyped information. Stereotypes guide our social behavior and drive our behaviors in everyday life. Prejudice is an emotional reaction or positive or negative feeling directed at a person based on their perceived group membership. Prejudice contributes to creating or maintaining hierarchical status relations between groups. Discrimination refers to actions, practices, or policies applied to people because of their perception or feeling of belonging to some socially relevant group, which imposes some form of disadvantage or advantage on them. In ageism, the stereotypes people carry about age can guide the inferences they make about others based on age. These inferences can lead to overgeneralizations that consider every person within a given age group to be the same. How individuals think, feel, and behave are closely linked. These behaviors directly influence the relationship between stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. It is multidirectional. Stereotypes influence our thinking and, therefore, influence prejudice and discrimination. Discrimination is related to how we think, i.e., stereotypes and prejudice stems from stereotypes that spill over into discrimination. These relationships are influenced by contexts, including laws and culture. The 4th section of this module addresses the socialization of the older adult people and ageism. The discourses associated with aging and the interactions between different cohorts may contribute to intergenerational ageism. Older people's experiences are not shaped by only one aspect of their identity but rather by a combination of factors. Although aging is a natural process, how societies view their older citizens and how individuals view old age will color both how older people are treated and how they view themselves. Older people are susceptible to huge factors that condition their health and social status. Ageism has severe and far-reaching consequences for people's health, well-being, and human rights, costing society billions of dollars. Ageism is associated with declining physical and mental health, increased social isolation and loneliness, greater financial insecurity and decreased quality of life, and premature death. Ageism increases social isolation and loneliness in three main ways. The feeling of exclusion. Ageism can result in feelings of being unwanted, betrayed, and socially rejected, potentially leading to social withdrawal. Stereotypes. By believing in ageist stereotypes, older people can exclude themselves from society as they believe they no longer have a participatory role. Policy and laws. With advancing age, the active working age ends, retirement, and the design of communities unsuited to the senior community can act as barriers to older people's participation in social activities, leading to social isolation and loneliness. Not only are individuals unhappy with their aging process, but we also harbor ambivalent attitudes toward older people in general. To reduce ageism, WHO highlights 3 strategies. Policies and laws, educational activities, and intergenerational contact interventions. Legislation needs to address age discrimination and inequality, policies to ensure respect for the dignity of all people regardless of age, and human rights laws. Educational interventions include instruction that imparts information, knowledge, skills, and activities to increase empathy through role play, simulation, and virtual reality. Intergenerational contact interventions aim to foster interaction between different generations. The adoption of policies and laws forms a critical strategy to be used to reduce or eliminate ageism, especially age discrimination. By definition, policies are plans, commitments, or courses of action that are undertaken to achieve a particular issue within a society. Laws correspond to the system of rules that a given country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members and which it can enforce by imposing penalties. Policies and laws designed to combat ageism are pretty varied and include age discrimination and equality legislation, as well as policies that set out actions to ensure proper respect for the dignity and equal status of all people regardless of their age. Although the effects of these policies are difficult to quantify, here are 6 examples worldwide that aim to combat ageism against older people. Political Declaration and Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging commits to eliminating all forms of discrimination, including age discrimination. The overall goal is to ensure that older people and other relevant stakeholders are involved at all stages, including in strategic development, policy design, and identification of activities. The Employment Equality Framework Directive of the European Union establishes a general framework for equal treatment in employment and occupation, which implements a framework to ensure equality irrespective of age. The African Union Protocol on the Rights of Older Persons prohibits all forms of discrimination against older persons. It covers a range of rights, including access to health services and rights to employment, social protection, and education, thus providing a framework for governments to protect these rights. The Inter-American Convention on Protecting the Human Rights of Older Persons fully safeguards the human rights of older persons. It explicitly prohibits discrimination based on age. Uruguay's legal and policy frameworks prohibit discrimination based on age and guarantee older and younger people equal and effective legal protection against discrimination. Equal Opportunities Act of Mauritius explicitly prohibits age discrimination in various fields of activity, including employment, education, and others. Adult education and learning are effective ways to improve the mutual knowledge between generations, deconstruct age-based stereotypes, and combat myths and prejudice. Lifelong learning can provide an essential framework for improving the lives of older adults. Literature has shown that older adults prefer informal and/or non-formal learning. Learning can ensure the older person's social inclusion, promoting broader opportunities for older people to achieve social change. Thus, non-formal and informal learning has undeniable potential to combat ageism and its consequences. Educational interventions to reduce ageism refer to a range of activities, which are often combined, including instruction that imparts information, knowledge, skills, and competencies to reduce age stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. These interventions also include activities aimed at increasing empathy through perspective taking, using, for example, role-playing, simulation, and virtual reality. Educational interventions that primarily seek to provide accurate information and examples against stereotyping, disseminating ideologies about a particular age group, and teaching more complex thinking skills allow people to consciously reconsider and update their beliefs, feelings, and behaviors and lead to a decrease in ageism. Here are some different examples of educational interventions. Workshops and conversations, educational intervention with an intergenerational element, workshops on human development throughout life, including lectures, discussions, films, and pamphlets, all focusing on issues important to aging. Life story documentaries, face-to-face educational intervention where people watched and discussed life story documentaries. Curriculum-based intervention, face-to-face educational intervention with 4 weekly interactive sessions involving group discussions, games, role-plays, and case studies. Virtual reality activities to foster empathy for older people. These 3 activities included creating a visual image of themselves as an older person, an immersive experience of completing various daily tasks in the home of an older person with moderate frailty. Intergenerational contact interventions typically involve bringing older and younger people together to interact cooperatively on tasks that encourage intergenerational bonding and understanding. These activities can be developed through direct or indirect contact. Intergenerational programs based on the intergroup contact theory strive to bring 2 generations closer together to promote and facilitate a change of attitudes between these actors. The authors of this theory recognize that contact between 2 generations not only reduces prejudice but also increases the accuracy of their perceptions towards the other generation. However, for these results to be achieved, the development of the intergenerational program and, with it, the intergenerational contact should respect some conditions. The existence of equal circumstances for both generations, i.e., the different participants should have equally active roles in the proposed activities. There should be a common goal among program participants, which could be to build relationships by sharing each other's personal history and, consequently, their experiences. Foster cooperation between the 2 generations, promoting mutual help and sharing. Intergroup contact can reduce ageism by facilitating the connection between groups, reducing prejudice and intergroup stereotypes, reducing anxiety about intergroup contact, and increasing perspective-taking and empathy. Intergenerational contact activities are the most commonly used to combat ageism. There are some examples. Video games in Singapore. This intervention involved direct contact between older and younger people who came together to play video games 6 times over 2 months. Results showed that enjoyment of the game played an important role in reducing intergenerational anxiety and improving attitudes among older people. Service learning in China. This intervention for nursing and medical students consisted of a half-day introductory workshop, a 10-week interaction period, and a half-day interjectional sharing session. The intervention increased general knowledge about aging and their understanding of mental health needs in old age and reduced their negative attitudes toward older adults. Home sharing in Portugal. The Aconchego program in Portugal encourages direct and sustained intergenerational contact. In this program, older people provide accommodation to university students, and, in return, the students help to alleviate the loneliness and isolation of older people. Imagined contact in the United Kingdom. Intervention based on indirect, imaginary intergenerational contact to reduce explicit and implicit negative attitudes towards older people among undergraduate students in the UK. Students were instructed to spend 2 minutes imagining themselves meeting an older stranger for the first time and were asked to imagine that they would discover exciting and unexpected things about this person. The intervention reduced explicit negative attitudes towards older people. Intergenerational contact has other benefits for older people. namely promoting improved health status and psychosocial well-being, increasing self-esteem, reducing distress, decreasing loneliness, leading to a greater sense of social connectedness and enhancing intergenerational solidarity. To prevent and respond to ageism, priority should be given to the three supported strategies: policy and laws, educational interventions, and intergenerational contact interventions. You've reached the end of Module 2. Thank you.